When you think about the greatest comebacks in business history, one story towers above the rest: the story of Steve Jobs. He wasn't just the co-founder of Apple, he was the visionary who turned a garage startup into a global empire. But here's what many people forget. Jobs was actually fired from Apple, the very company he helped create. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. But for Jobs, it was just the beginning of a legendary comeback, one that would make him a billionaire and turn Apple into the most valuable company in the world. This is the incredible tale of Steve Jobs' billion-dollar comeback. Let's rewind to the mid-1970s. Jobs, along with his friend Steve Wozniak, built the Apple One computer in his parents' garage. It wasn't much more than a circuit board, but it sparked a revolution. By the early 1980s, Apple had become a rising star in Silicon Valley. Jobs was hailed as a young genius, a visionary who could see the future of personal computing. The launch of the Macintosh in 1984 was supposed to cement Apple's dominance, but instead, it marked the beginning of Jobs' downfall. The Macintosh was beautiful, ahead of its time, and packed with innovations, but it was also expensive and struggled in the marketplace. Apple's board of directors started losing faith in Jobs. They brought in John Sculley, the Pepsi executive Jobs had personally recruited to be Apple's CEO. But soon, Sculley and Jobs clashed. By 1985, the board sided with Sculley, and Steve Jobs was effectively pushed out of Apple, the company he had built from nothing. Imagine that, being kicked out of your own creation at just 30 years old. For many people, this would have been devastating. Jobs later admitted it was crushing, but instead of giving up, he turned his setback into a new beginning. He founded a new computer company called NeXT. The idea was to build high-end workstations for universities and businesses. Next computers were sleek, powerful, and innovative, but they were also expensive and didn't sell well. On the surface, NeXT looked like a failure, but hidden inside its machines was something revolutionary: the Next STP operating system. That software would later become the foundation for Mac OS, the system that powers every Apple computer today. At the same time, Jobs also bought a small graphics company from George Lucas for $10 million. That company was called Pixar. At first, Pixar wasn't focused on movies. It made hardware and software for computer graphics, but Jobs believed in the vision of its creative team, led by John Lasseter and Ed Catmull. Pixar eventually pivoted into animation, and in 1995 it released the world's first fully computer-animated feature film, Toy Story. The film was a smash hit, grossing $373 million worldwide. Pixar went on to create a string of blockbuster hits: Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, and more. Pixar didn't just succeed, it changed Hollywood forever. And when Pixar went public in 1995, Jobs' stake in the company instantly made him a billionaire. Remember, when he left Apple, Jobs wasn't close to being a billionaire, but thanks to Pixar, he became one. And later, when Disney bought Pixar for $7.4 billion in 2006, Jobs became the largest individual shareholder in Disney, holding 7% of the company. That investment alone would have cemented his place among the world's richest men. But the comeback wasn't complete yet. By the mid-1990s, Apple was in serious trouble. The company was bleeding money, its products weren't selling, and it was losing ground to Microsoft. Many experts thought Apple was doomed. In desperation, Apple decided to buy Next in 1997 for $429 million. With that acquisition, Steve Jobs returned to Apple. He came back not as the visionary co-founder, but as the company's savior. When Jobs returned, Apple was only 90 days away from bankruptcy. The company was bloated, unfocused, and its products were uninspiring. Jobs immediately cut through the mess. He slashed projects, simplified Apple's product line, and focused on innovation. He also struck a surprising deal with Bill Gates and Microsoft to invest $150 million in Apple and continue developing Microsoft Office for the Mac. Many Apple fans were furious, but Jobs knew it was necessary for survival. Then came the products that changed everything. In 1998, Apple released the iMac, a colorful all-in-one computer that broke away from the beige boxes dominating the market. It was a smash hit and put Apple back on the map, but Jobs wasn't satisfied with just saving Apple. He wanted to reinvent it. Over the next decade, Apple launched a series of revolutionary products: the iPod in 2001, the iTunes Store in 2003, the iPhone in 2007, and the iPad in 2010. Each one didn't just succeed, it redefined entire industries. The iPod changed the way we listen to music, replacing CDs and Walkmans with digital libraries in our pockets. The iTunes Store changed the music industry itself, making digital downloads mainstream. The iPhone transformed the mobile phone into a handheld computer, creating the app economy and putting the internet in everyone's pocket. And the iPad bridged the gap between laptops and smartphones, becoming a category of its own. Jobs' vision wasn't just about products, it was about building an ecosystem. Every Apple device worked seamlessly with the others, locking customers into a world where once you owned one Apple product, you wanted them all. That strategy turned Apple into a money-making machine. By the time of Jobs' death in 2011, Apple wasn't just saved, it had become the most valuable company in the world. So how did Jobs pull off this billion-dollar comeback? It came down to three key things: vision, resilience, and design. Jobs had an uncanny ability to see not just where technology was, but where it was going. He saw that personal computers would be about creativity and design. He saw that music would go digital. He saw that phones would become pocket-sized computers, and he demanded excellence in design, making products not only functional, but beautiful. But perhaps most importantly, Jobs never gave up after his biggest failure. Being ousted from Apple could have destroyed him, but instead he used that time to grow. In his own words, getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. That beginner's mindset allowed him to take risks, like buying Pixar, that paid off massively. Financially, Jobs' comeback was staggering. When he returned to Apple in 1997, the company was worth around $3 billion. By the time of his passing in 2011, Apple was worth over $350 billion. Today, Apple's value has soared past $2 trillion, making it the most valuable company on Earth. Jobs himself went from being a millionaire in his 20s to nearly broke in his 30s to a billionaire many times over by the time he returned to Apple. His personal fortune at death was estimated at $10 billion, much of it thanks to Pixar's sale to Disney. But beyond the money, Jobs' legacy is the culture of innovation he built. He proved that technology doesn't have to be ugly or complicated. It can be simple, intuitive, and even joyful. He also proved that failure doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of a bigger one. Today, when people look at Apple products in their hands or Pixar movies on their screens, they see the result of Jobs' vision. His comeback wasn't just about making billions, it was about changing the world. He transformed multiple industries: computing, music, film, and telecommunications, all because he refused to let failure define him. The story of Steve Jobs is more than just a business case study. It's a lesson for anyone facing setbacks. Sometimes being knocked down gives you the chance to come back even stronger. Jobs' billion-dollar comeback is proof that with vision, resilience, and the courage to keep going, you can not only reclaim what you lost, but create something far greater. If Steve Jobs' billion-dollar comeback inspired you, imagine what resilience and vision could do in your own life. Don't let setbacks define you. Use them as fuel to create your own comeback story. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe for more incredible stories of innovation, wealth, and perseverance. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think was Steve Jobs' greatest contribution? The iPhone, Pixar, or something else? Your voice helps shape our next videos. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story that could spark your next big idea.